We're going to do a bit of role playing. I'm going to be a VP of HR, kind of healthcare organization. But again, you guys are, I'll kind of try and make sure that some of the examples will hit you guys. And we're going to be kind of going through what it looks like in discovery, and Jonathan is going to be my helping me understand, how I can best utilize the system on day one. What is not a lift and shift? What can we use in the core functionality that will allow it strategy and without having to turn on time yet?
Yeah, and so I'll be myself, as Melissa mentioned. And Sarah, we also have Sarah Tisdale, who's a member of the HCM team. She has agreed to assist us today. So Sarah, if Melissa or I have IT issues, I can actually watch the chat. So if you could be prepared to pull the deck up just in case there's a delay, and I can watch the chat. So Sarah, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having
me. All right, let's go, Melissa.
Let's go. Okay, so discovery day one. What keeps me up at night? Generally when I look at an organization and look at my organization, I'm seeing, people are doing a lot of different things, whether or not it's their job, it's their role, maybe it's their name, not their chair that they have access to, or they're getting thrown into something because of rifts. So I don't even know who is doing what, and if they should be having access to what they have. Visibility is terrible. When I'm looking for information, I can make a request to my team, and it takes them, 2 days to a week to get that back to me. So by the time they get it back to me, the data is no longer valid. It's a point in time as to when they started pulling it and manipulating it for me. I don't really have any dashboards. I can't see patterns. I can't see, anything that can help me make decisions to be made or for the organization over the next year. Got a lot of manual processes in place. We're a huge healthcare organization, or we're, this, state-of-the-art school, university. We've got a lot of money that goes into other places, and it doesn't go into HR because HR isn't revenue generating. So I still have paper files. I still have, somebody moving something either through email or spreadsheets around for approvals. I don't like this. It's 2020. Things should be a little bit more automated for me. And, when I want to think about capturing or utilizing, leveraging my internal talent, I don't want people to leave. People have been in my organization for years, and they bring a lot of that institutional knowledge. And I want to be able to move them into the right areas, into leadership where it's applicable. I don't want them to get bored or the people who are already here that only care about the people that I want to hire. So, who can I move around? And I can't see that. I don't know what the knowledge base and the core competencies are in my organization. So Jonathan, what can we do about that? What can we do about that with GHR or Cloud Suite, HCM?
So Melissa, thank you for spending so much time. I know as the head of technology at Happy Hospital, your schedule is really tight. You already sent us some kind of notes that we were able to kind of document in advance. And so I've read through all of those, and we actually have some really cool things to share with you today. But really thanks for being prepared. If we can move on to the next slide, we can start talking about some of it. Yeah, so I definitely heard as I read through your notes that, it's kind of difficult for you to control kind of access to data. From what I saw in, one of the emails you forwarded to us last week, you have a few instances where people get data that they shouldn't, and it's caused some risk to be received by the organization. Also, in terms of like delegating things, there's a lot of manual work, like when a leader needs to pass on an activity to somebody else. And I'm also, reading through some of the notes where you kind of have a hard time accounting for like your real management structure. Like we know who someone's, solid line manager may be, but you kind of have a hard time with some of the more matrix relationships and some of those functional relationships that may change or may not be as black and white. Is that sort of accurate, Melissa, what we were
That's,
able to synthesize from your notes?
yeah, that's very accurate. Yes.
Okay. So we have a few cool things on our, a few slides here that we can walk through that I think may help address some of your access issues. The first is role-based security. And this is something I know you and I are in the very beginning of our project. This is day one of discovery. We will soon shift into design, but I think we have a 1 or 2 week agenda full of discovery topics. And I really appreciate this one-on-one time with you before we meet with the larger team. One thing, Melissa, that we're really excited about is the role-based security that GHR offers. So we actually, out of the box, have a number of roles. We will work with your team members in the coming weeks to actually do a security workshop. We're going to review all of those roles. They are plug and play roles. If your team has a need, let's say you have different levels of HR generalists. So let's say you have HR directors that should have access to more sensitive information, but then you have some HR assistants that should really just have basic data. We can actually copy roles and change roles around, and we'll work with you and your team to make sure we have all of those requirements together. It actually is going to reduce, I know a lot of my clients that, a lot of our clients are coming from Lawson S3 as their legacy system. A lot of times there's been a great deal of configuration done to support security. So instead of saying, hey, Melissa is in a HR director role, so she should see, all pay components, they may have like gone in and tried to hide fields and things of that nature, but we can actually use security so that you only see what you should see. And one really cool thing about it, to your note around data being shown to leaders that they shouldn't see, it actually works for reporting. So if I send you a report through GHR and you're an HR assistant, but you are not to see pay, you actually will not see that value. So if Sally makes $10, you will not see her salary. So those are really cool things. And I was actually excited when you shared that that was one of your pain points, because that's something that we can very easily remedy.
That's great, because it's huge. It is,
yeah.
I have people that do verification of employment, so they need access to the employer resource record, but they don't need to see pay. They don't need to see any kind of employee relations information, whether they're hireable or not. Well, maybe they do, but it's hard, today in LA, stuff that they shouldn't see. So I like to hear that.
I'm happy that you're happy. So this relationship is off to a good start, it seems like.
Yeah, it is.
If we can move on to our next slide.
Here we go.
Another really cool thing that we have is Proxy. So we have the ability for, let's say that you were going out on a leave of absence and you sort of wanted one of your managers to sort of be Melissa for that 6 week period, that you're out. In manager self-service, you can actually request Proxy. Some clients who are not ready to empower managers with that much control on day one, we've had some clients that may want those Proxy requests to go to HR, for HR to validate should Melissa's senior manager under her have access to approve terminations, to approve pay changes, to create requisitions. And Melissa, you and HR, or however you decide to set it up, can control, okay, Jonathan is going to be Melissa's proxy, but he can only make requisitions. He can't fire people. He can't transfer people or change pay. But if someone leaves or vacates, he actually can go in to talent acquisition and start a staffing requisition. And when he does that, he'll be able to see on his screen that he's proxying as Melissa Olson, and that it'll be very clear and overt that Jonathan did that on her behalf. We've had a lot of clients in the past that do a lot of manual workarounds. They may do some additional work assignments to give Jonathan that ability, but really Proxy is delivered, and it's definitely there to support things like leaders going on leave. if you have an executive assistant that you feel comfortable sharing that authority with, that's what it's for. And a lot of clients, they may design governance around that to make sure that it is well controlled. But I think that's really going to be exciting. And we actually have a proxy design session with some of your team members, I think in about 2 weeks.
That's really great to hear, because yeah, there are times that I need somebody to just take a look at, my approvals. I'm out of the office for a couple of days at a conference, and I don't want any time sensitive stuff to get kind of stopped at my desk. And so if I was able to give somebody proxy access to just approve anything that comes through, that, that really would save time and be a lot more efficient. And again, people are always just waiting, pinging me, can you get this signed? Okay.
Great. No, I'm glad you're excited. And we actually have some more stuff to show you. So let's talk about just managers in general. So one conversation that we generally have with clients that is very rich is, what is the relationship between a manager and their resources and the positions? So I know in the pre-sales area, we talked a lot about jobs and positions. So I know you know what that means, but what we recommend is that managers have their own positions. So if you're a accounting director, and you have 10 accountant roles that report to you, in the system, there would be about 10 unique positions where your name or your manager role, the director of accounting, it will be on those positions. We also have really cool functionality called dotted line managers. So let's say 5 of those accountants report indirectly to the director of revenue cycle, right? So they work for you as the director of accounting, but they do a lot of work within the revenue cycle. And those leaders there need to have access. Maybe the other 5 have a dotted line responsibility to FP&A because they're really involved with budgeting. So really, GHR supports 2 leaders having a degree of access to those employees in manager space. So if the dotted line manager wanted to know about some of your qualifications, maybe if you had, your CPA, they will be able to see that in manager space. And there's a really cool icon that will help differentiate. So in terms of the pain point that you mentioned in some of your notes to us a few weeks ago about access and data being all over the place, GHR is definitely, as most modern systems are, it really empowers users through self-service. So I think today you all are doing a lot of reports and emailing Excel spreadsheets to get leaders the information that they need. But with manager space, you can empower your leaders to actually see the information right there on their screen.
That is great to hear.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
I think that may be it for that section, or maybe there's one more if we could just keep going.
Yeah, no, that's it. So now let's get to my visibility, because it's huge. It's other than going in and going to HR 11 or trying to bring up some information, which honestly I hardly even know how to log into Lawson at this point. It's been so long since I've been in. I can't do that. So help me figure out how I can get to the information and see the information easily.
Sure, and I'm glad we're talking about
week to get it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you raised that as one of your, kind of pain point areas. A lot of times with clients and projects, whether it's Infor or other systems, reporting is kind of like an afterthought. So I'm glad that even in discovery, we've already started to talk about your reporting pain points. So I was very excited when I saw that come across my desk. So one thing that we do is we offer a lot of our clients, they'll do essentially like an analysis of, well, here are the 100 user fields I have in Lawson S3 today. And this is generally part of design. Here are all my user fields. Let's compare those Lawson user fields to what's already delivered in GHR out of the box, intended for that purpose. It is not a user-defined field. One section that is always top of mind is what we call our job and position classifications. So those are fields delivered such as like job level. So you may say that your more junior level is an intern, and maybe the job always goes up all the way to executive management, right? Then you may have your job family. So maybe there's like a nursing job family. Maybe there is a pharmacy job family. If you're a municipality, maybe there's a fire job family. Then you can even categorize your jobs and positions. So let's say that you wanted all of your oncology jobs to be grouped, whether it be for talent acquisition recruitment purposes or reporting. You can even go further into that, into subcategories. Maybe some of your oncology specialties, maybe leukemia, maybe there's a leukemia service and you want to be able to report on that, or you want job applicants that have experience with that service line to apply for specific roles. So that's something that we've seen. Clients have used a lot of different S3 fields to kind of help build that model. And Melissa, that sits on the job and position. So our job and position design session, exactly, they're delivered fields and they're even integrated. So I'm using talent acquisition intentionally in that some of those fields actually are part of the candidate experience. So they'll be able to search on those. And so we'll work with your team to make sure we're using the right fields appropriately. Another thing that clients really get excited about is being able to better define the employee's relationship or the resources relationship, because as we mentioned to you in the sales cycle, GHR does a great job of supporting resources that are not paid. They may be contractors, they could be a vendor. So with GHR, you can actually break out your status into 3 areas. A lot of our Lawson clients probably, I haven't looked at all of your statuses yet, but oftentimes there's one kind of value to denote the status. But within GHR, we can say, A, what is that person's relationship? Are they an employee? Are they a vendor? Are they a temp? What's their status? Like, are they active? Are they inactive? And then what's their work type? So a lot of times clients use that with the heavy benefits focus. So are they part-time, 19 hours or less? Are they full-time, 40? What is that work type? And so another exercise that many clients will go through in our design phase, which is why you can already see our design phase is several weeks long, we'll begin to talk through, okay, how do we want to best use these statuses? How do we want to use these job and position classifications? And when we get to unit testing, which is scheduled for a few months out, you'll actually be able to see the work the team has done, and you'll be able to go in because at unit testing, we use the delivered fields. So these are delivered, they're not configured. So you'll be able to see reports and data using elements just like this.
Nice. So it would be helpful if I let my team about this and start how they want to be able to slice and dice our data. And when they come to those design sessions, they can be prepared with how, the levels and families type of information.
Absolutely. And Melissa, generally what we do, any information that we've collected during like discovery or pre-sales, we'll bring that to the design session. So we'll kick off the design session by summarizing, hey, here's what we heard. Here are some of the major pain points, because some of the people in the design session have not yet been engaged. We'll talk about what is it that you're trying to solve for. And so this is not sort of a one and done. It matures throughout the life of the project.
Okay, great.
Oh, now this is a biggie. And we generally have a lot of fun conversations about your organization structure because it's so different from Lawson S3. There's often a degree of anxiety when we first begin talking about it because of how different it is. But then once the team understands it, we usually get a lot of smiles. So we know with a lot of our Lawson clients, you are really focused on sort of your accounts and what's the account code. I know when leaders request reports, they may actually say, give me a report around this account. But with GHR, you're definitely not tied to sort of an accounting-based model. So an example I always use, let's say that the head of HR comes to your team after we're live and she says, you know what? I'm going to build a campus recruiting department. My pharmacy leaders have really been on my recruiters about not being able to find, the right people to fill some of my roles. So I'm going to build a campus recruiting team. But guess what? I'm going to build the headcount to pharmacy. The pharmacy leaders have already agreed that if I can get them the talent they need, because they're looking for junior talent to groom, that they'll pay for it. So Melissa, your team can actually build a campus recruiting, what we call org unit, which is a department, and you can actually attach a non-HR accounting structure to that. And then those heads would be built against that. So that's very exciting. Yeah. Another thing, as I looked at your notes when you kind of talked about reporting on the depth. Oh, go ahead, Melissa. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that's huge because all we have is our cost centers, and if it doesn't fall in a cost center, we can't, be able to get it tighter, get all the departments that are in that cost center. So yeah, that's huge for me.
Yeah. And then I noticed that kind of reporting on the depth of an organization, we have multiple levels. There's an unlimited number. And I'll keep using my HR example. So let's say that, HR rolls up. Let's say, I think you're mostly centralized. So let's say HR rolls up to the office of the COO, right? And then HR has maybe shared services. Maybe they then have comp and ben, they have staffing. Underneath that, we would now have campus recruiting. But let's say in 2 years from now, your campus recruiting is so large, you need a separate department just for campus recruiting coordinators. Yeah. You've made the business decision that you need to be able, that the head of HR has decided rather, that he or she needs to be able to report just on that as its own entity because it's grown so much. You can keep adding those. There's no limit to the number of levels, and you can report all the way through. So as an example, and you can even process all the way through. So let's say the head of recruiting that owns everything decided, I want to look at all of the people within my whole area. I need a report of just those folks. That works. And another really cool thing about it is that leader could look at, I want to see the people that I just manage, and that's that leader's management structure, or they may just want to see the people in the departments that are under his or her department. So we can separate those. Those are actually two separate structures, supervisors and organization. And from doing the discovery with your team and reading through your notes, I think you'll find a lot of value there.
Great. That's exciting to hear. Okay, so talk to me about some other features that we can get out of this.
Yeah, and this is a really, really simple one, but we've had clients in the past that, for different reasons, they may not feel comfortable leveraging it, but when we go into clients, sometimes they have, hundreds of reports, and reports are being sent via, emails and on SharePoint and reporting libraries. One really cool thing about GHR in general, I would say 90+% of the time, if you see something on your screen like a table of data, like a list of your employees and their birthdays, or if you're an administrative user, a list of jobs, even something that you filter, generally anything that's on your screen, you can actually dump it into a report. So this also goes back to some of your pain points around people having the right data. If the user can see the data in the system, assuming you've set your security up right, and I'm sure you will because we'll have multiple rounds of testing, if they can see it on their screen, they should be able to get it into a report. But instead of them calling someone or having to go visit a report library, they can just go options, export, and it comes out in a really nice CSV file. They can also have access to move columns around and things of that nature. If they kind of want to see the employee ID right after the name, that's an option. But this is a huge sort of delivered win. So we're actually going to do a reporting workshop with you. I know we talked about that in pre-sales, where we actually begin the process of going through all of your reports. And we'll make some decisions around, okay, let's collapse these. Or, you know what, this report of birthdays, that's a great list view report. in our manager training, we can just tell managers, hey, if you want to know the birthdays of folks, don't call your HR partner. Go to birthdays and export.
Yeah.
So we'll dig a lot deeper here in our reporting work stream. But I figured you would really like this based on some of the pain points you raised.
Yeah, and it's easy. I don't have to have the team go to IT to customize something for them if things change, if business changes, which is application.
Constant change.
Hey, let's talk about how,
Oh, yeah, this is a fun topic.
I abhor paper, and yet I still have a file room. Still have a lot of stuff on paper. We still have, our open enrollment through. So, and then a lot of times there are things that are going on. I don't know. I don't see it or I don't approve it because I have no idea what's going on, in the system around there. So.
Yeah, this is common, and I would say, most of the clients I've had in my Infor career have issues with information. Not only is it manual, sometimes it's in 7 different systems, and kind of as you were saying, Melissa, it's hard to make business decisions if you have to look in 7 systems, or if you have to call 7 people to get 7 reports and then try to merge them. And I've had a lot of conversations with clients that truly have data managed in manila file folders. One thing that I think is, often a sensitive topic is kind of like notes on employees. So we've had clients that maybe keep notes in their email or keep them in their desk to kind of say, hey, I'm concerned about the smell of smoke on my employees, or hey, my employee's not performing, or hey, I just had another coaching session. So within GHR, you can actually take notes on your employees. It doesn't always have to be something constructive. It could be, hey, my accountant just got an email from their client saying how grateful they are for the new reporting dashboards. I can copy that email or even attach it to a note. And when it's time for me to do his or her performance appraisal, I can go back and I can look at all the notes and all the kudos that person has received. Kind of on the other end of the spectrum, if I'm noticing a pattern of behavior that may be less than desirable, I can go back to those notes about, hey, Sally clocked in, 15 minutes late. She usually does it every Monday. She told me she likes Sunday night football. Maybe that's how I want to use those notes. Really, the sky is the limit, and there's absolutely security and configuration that can control who sees them. So if you don't want anyone else to see your notes, the employees or anyone else, we can absolutely configure that. So we're going to talk about take notes actually in your employee relations design session, simply because most of our clients, do use those for employee relations matters. There's actually additional functionality in Cloud Suite HCM that supports sort of recognition, but we generally find 85% of the time it's more matters that may evolve into employee relations incidents.
Right, and then all of that documentation is already in there. It's already started. It's not like you.
Right, because I've heard stories about those manila file folders being found when people are cleaning, or leaders that are storing things in their email. The awful forward or reply all. It's very much risky, and this is something, Melissa, just out of the box. We don't even have to configure it. We can turn it on immediately. We have to test it. And you'll hear me, I'll say that a lot to your team. We have to test it, but it's ready.
Okay.
So transition management, I think this is something that's like a lot of checklists, a lot of paperwork. Really, transition, a lot of times clients think you can only use it with talent acquisition, but you can also use it without talent acquisition. So let's just say you're still using, I forget which ATS you're running right now, but let's just say it's ATSX. Of course, when you hire those people, one of the interfaces that we'll likely design is going to be an interface from ATSX to GHR. But still, there may need to be some key tasks the employee needs to perform or that the manager needs to perform. We can actually set up tasks automatically in the system and assign those. It's essentially onboarding. Also, when employees move, regardless of how the move is facilitated, if it's through your ATS or if it's maybe a management directed move, it's what we call cross-boarding. So let's say you're currently in a role where you don't, let's say you're a RN on the floor and you do not have a laptop, but now you're moving into a nurse manager role and you're going to be doing work, maybe from home and you need a laptop. We can make sure there's a task for your manager to maybe request that of IT, or maybe it can go directly to IT. We can have a design session to kind of talk about how that works for you right now and how it may need to be optimized. And then also offboarding. While we hate to see employees go, let's just talk about a retirement. So let's say that Sally's been with you for 35 years and she's ready to move to Aruba, but guess what? She needs to turn in that laptop. She also needs to turn in her badge. Maybe we don't want her trying to get those benefits anymore by showing her badge at the movie theater. So that we've decided we need folks to turn their badges back in. We can initiate what we call offboarding tasks to help facilitate that retirement for her.
That's cool. And in the first 90 days, while people are still, while we're trying us out, so I could put all in something like a transition.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think when I looked at sort of our initial planning, I am recommending transition management. If you had a much shorter sort of road to go live, we couldn't do it. But I think when I looked at how much time you have in place, I think that's something we can design. A lot of this is delivered. It's just going to take some design sessions with your team that we can delete. It shouldn't be a lot of configuration. But yes, I did notice you had those 90-day plans, and I think those would be great for onboarding.
Great.
So another thing, when I think back to all the different, manual, because I think as I read through some of the notes that you shared with us last week, there's a lot of manual, hey, don't forget to call Bob. Remember to do this. Oh, Sally changed her name. Let me call Keisha and tell her. There's a lot of automation around some of the delivered actions. So as you may know, the IPA tool can send an email at almost any event. That does take a degree of configuration, but out of the box, when events happen like an email change, maybe an employee has added some employment history, maybe an address change, maybe a new skill has been asked, has been requested, or has been validated. Some of those sort of less complex activities that don't require a great deal of approval and flows that we may want to look at IPA for, we can actually build very quickly email templates. And it's as simple as almost writing it in Outlook, where you kind of write your message in. You can do like a control left and insert the name of the employee. If you want to say dear sir or dear Sally. So a lot of our clients find a degree of relief in some of the manual messaging that they do right now.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a, my payroll gets mad at the HR team, letting them know something happened. So the system, yeah, but it didn't reverse for them, and they didn't realize that termination was pulled back and turned into a transfer. So I mean, that's one of the biggest ones that I could see if they were notified that somebody termination was reversed, which I don't know what it looks like in your GHR system, but if that was come back and they get some sort of email that the person was now transferred, that would save so much time. And they've already been they may already be going through a final check, and all of that has because one person and payroll and benefits. This can be a game changer for us, really.
Right. And one thing that I think you may like in particular, oftentimes when we finish up design, we'll produce kind of like our key wins library. As because I think you're one of the project sponsors, as you're having conversations with leaders, we can provide you like sort of a checklist of here are all the lifts that you're going to get just from your initial implementation. I think a lot of times clients think, oh, I'm just moving to another Infor system. And so sometimes there's a concept of a lift and shift mentality. And at times, based upon constraints like timing and budget and scope, there is a lot of lifting and shifting. But if there's an appetite and if the constraints allow it, there are a lot of really cool things that we can do at that go live one. And we'll equip you with a list of those.
Great.
I read something, and you'll have to tell me more about it because I didn't. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, if we want to shift to figuring out how to leverage all of my internal talent.
Yeah, I know, and I think when I talked to one of your leaders, I think there's a lot of qualifications that you guys manage in file cabinets and sort of the HR file room, and it's really difficult when things are on paper for those things for you to be in compliance. Sort of on the flip side, I think employees also are really anxious to know, well, what does it take for me to move into that next role? So we have 5 different qualification types that are delivered. So one is competencies. Those are generally more subjective. So a competency may be like facilitating a meeting with executives, right? Maybe all of your directors and above should have that. There's also things like skills, which are more black and white, like Microsoft Excel. So if you can't make a pivot table, you may not be considered advanced, but if you can bold text in Excel, maybe you're a beginner. We also have credentials, so like your nursing licensure. Of course, education, so like any formal degree program, and then achievements. So if some of your providers have actually written papers and spoken at global conferences, those could be noted as achievements. Your employees can actually disclose those things. So I've worked on projects in the past where the decision was, hey, we're going to allow some of maybe those regulated qualifications, maybe those are tightly managed, but maybe things like achievements and maybe even some competencies and maybe some skills, maybe we allow the employees to disclose those to us. There is delivered, Melissa, validation technology out of the box.
Oh, wow.
Where you can assign someone to validate, whether it be that person's manager or that person's maybe HR representative. And it really allows employees to sort of speak for themselves. I always compare it to like a LinkedIn profile, where you can go in your profile and add your skills, your work history, your education. There's a cool delivered tool called Percent Fit. And I know a decision has not been made as to whether or not we're going to say to be qualified to be an RN, it has these competencies, these skills, and we will make the decision on that within the next 30 days or so. If that is the decision that's made, employees can not only compare themselves against their current role, and they'll see like a spider diagram of here's how I fit, if they're thinking about that next level. So if they want to move into a charge nurse or a nursing supervisor role, they can sort of say, okay, compare me to this role within self-service, and they can see a diagram of, I may want to work on my leadership competencies or something like that. And again, cool functionality out of the box, you can attach things. So if I wanted to say I was a certified project manager, I can attach my PMI certification, and then maybe my manager or someone could validate that when things are about to expire. So if my CPR is due to expire and I know I have to go to like maybe a refresher course, my manager and I can get emails and things of that nature. So there's a lot of cool functionality here that I think you may find very interesting.
Yeah, that is huge in healthcare. Clinical can't be on the floor if they don't have certain certifications. Right. So to get it early? And can I set it up with a specific time frame, or is this something that only comes out a month before or a couple of weeks before?
So it's totally user defined. So there's already delivered fields where we can say, hey, do this X days before expiration. So it is absolutely time bound.
Great.
And you can do it by object. So if CPR has one set, but then the nursing licensure has another, we can set it up by object.
Nice. Yeah, that is really helpful, and as is the employees being able to put their own qualifications and competencies in, because the HR team has so many things they have to do. The last thing
Right.
they have time for is going and gathering this information after new hire. We're not going to go out and do it. I mean, further down the road, I have that as a project that we'd like to do, but I've had that further down the road for the last 3 years. So a tool like this that'll help me start gathering that information on people who've been with our organization and have gotten qualifications and competencies as they've been a part of our organization is really important. So yeah, I definitely see a benefit in trying to get as much as we can for this first go live under qualifications. And we don't have to have everything in for every position, right?
You do not. You could right. You could maybe pilot certain roles or certain org units. Maybe you just have one hospital in your system and you want to try it for that. You can totally approach this. This does not have to be big bang. You can do it based on. It is a whole lot.
Yeah.
You may just want to pick a few roles to start with. We can talk more about that once we get further in design, and we'll try to refine the scope and confirm what that scope is.
Great.
But you're right. We don't have to boil the ocean.
Yeah, I like that. Wow. Yeah, I think we got a lot of the stuff that I was concerned about. A lot of the things that we're spending a lot of money on this product, and if we turned it on and it gave me exactly what I've got in S3 today, how can I justify to continue to get budget for HCM if the organization isn't seeing more? So being able to see that I can do all of these things day one will help me continue to hopefully be able to present to the board to get budget to do more on the talent management side. So
absolutely,
it's been great. Thank you so much for all of this, Jonathan.
Oh, you're welcome.
And there we go. So we hope you got some information out of this. I didn't do too much in the intro, but I've been around HR for almost 20 years now, and these are, as both a client and a consultant, and these are a lot of the things that I hear back when I was an HRIS manager, back when I talked to a lot of organizations. So you're not alone out there. You're not alone if you're on paper. You're not alone if you don't have MSS turned on or ESS turned on. There's a huge percentage of organizations that aren't there, and it's because the tool doesn't easily support you. So we hope that you saw things today that will help you turn those things on and go live one. It's a lot easier and a lot cleaner, and it's a great user experience. And if there's any questions, yeah, Jonathan put it in the chat there. If there's any questions for us, we've got about 3 more minutes that will be in the session. And then, we can always find us at the Expo booth. We've got a bunch of show and tell sessions going on. So if you want to dig into some of those talent management modules or anything that you learned today that you might want to ask somebody to see it in the system, you can definitely go into one of those show and tell sessions for some more learning.
Thanks, Melissa. And for those of you, I think it was Stout, earlier today, he was talking about planning for your implementation. So as I mentioned, everything we just talked about is delivered. But in your planning, if you don't plan enough time in your runway for Go Live 1, you're not going to have enough time to design some of this. So this is not a lot of technical, or you may hear us call RICE work. This is sort of out of the box, but it takes a lot of time, to Melissa's point, to even decide, well, do we want to attach competencies to jobs? If so, which ones? Who's going to make the decision? Like, there's a lot of internal, more strategic work that has to happen. So just kind of keep in mind, if your goal is to be able to clearly justify the investment and the tangible wins for Go Live 1, a lot of times allowing more time in your implementation, which doesn't always correspond to additional cost, that may be a key tool.